Hello, this is Professor Kalra, and this is the second video in a series of 3 that form part of the Stories That Made Us Migration and Identity event. In the previous video, I talked about migrant writers and the contribution that they've made to literature in Britain in their own languages. And in this video and the following one, I want to give you some examples of migrant women writers. And so the author that I want to talk about is someone called Kailash Puri. She's someone that I knew personally, and she passed away in 2012. So I'm going to just tell you a little bit about her life and her writings, and then I'm going to read an extract from one of her short stories, firstly in Punjabi, and then I'll summarize the story as you can read the text in English, or just an example of the text in English, because obviously the whole story would be too much to translate at this in such a short video. So Kailash Puri is someone who wrote an autobiography along with Professor Eleanor Nesbitt from Warwick University, which was published in 2014, and it was called The Pool of Life. And it's the autobiography of a Punjabi agony aunt, because alongside being a short story writer and a poet and a novelist, Kailash was also what you might want to call an agony aunt. And as you can see from the slide, she wrote a lot. She wrote 4 novels in Punjabi, 1 in Hindi, a big collection of short stories, one of which I will read, 10 books on sexology. In fact, she pioneered a whole language in Punjabi around the discussions of sex, 2 autobiographies, 3 cookery books, and 4 poetry collections. She was born in the early 1930s in what is now Pakistan, and actually migrated to Britain on 2 different occasions. Once just after independence of India in the late 1940s, and then in the 60s. She was also an editor of 2 magazines for women, Subhagvati in India and Rupvati in the UK. And this focus on women in her writing and in her outlook is really quite important, and you'll see that in the extract and in the story that I'll read to you. She had 4 short stories, for a collection of 4 books, which are a collection of all of her short stories. And the book I've got a selection from is Lady Margaret. And Lady Margaret refers to Lady Margaret Road in Southall, which is a very popular road for Punjabi settlers in West London. So the story that I want to read to you is called Bachni, and Bachni is the name of the protagonist. And so I'm just going to read a little bit in Punjabi, and then I will give you the summary of the story, and either you can pause the video and read the extracts in English, or I'll integrate the extracts into my telling of the story. In Punjabi, I'm going to read the first 2 paragraphs from the story. So the title of the story is Bachni. Bachni nu sari raat neend na aayi. Unj roz da masa o uthdi, ਅੱਖਾਂ ਖੁੱਲਦੀਆਂ ਹੀ ਨਾ, ਪਰ ਅੱਜ ਉਹ ਘੜੀ ਦਾ ਅਲਾਰਮ ਖੜਕਣ ਤੋਂ ਕਿੰਨੀ ਦੇਰ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਹੀ ਰਜ਼ਾਈ ਚੋਂ ਨਿਕਲ ਕੇ ਮੂੰਹ ਹੱਥ ਧੋ ਕੇ ਤਿਆਰ ਹੋਣ ਲੱਗ ਪਈ ਸੀ। ਉਂਝ ਰੋਜ਼ ਤਾਂ ਉਹ ਕਿਸੇ ਸਰੂਰ ਵਿੱਚ ਤਿਆਰ ਹੁੰਦੀ, ਕੱਸ ਕੇ ਉੱਚਾ ਬੱਧਾ ਹੋਇਆ ਜੂੜਾ, ਮੱਥੇ ਤੇ ਸੂਹੀ ਗੋਲ ਵੱਡੀ ਸਾਰੀ ਬਿੰਦੀ, ਰੱਤੀ ਲਾਲ ਲਿਪਸਟਿਕ ਤੇ ਮੂੰਹ ਤੇ ਪਾਊਡਰ ਲਾਉਣ ਮਗਰੋਂ ਉਹ ਰਤਾ ਕੋ ਸੁਰਕੀ ਵੀ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਤੇ ਛੋਹ ਦਿੰਦੀ। ਇਹ ਸੁਰਕੀ ਤੇ ਸੂਹੀ ਲਿਪਸਟਿਕ ਹੀ ਸੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਉਹਦੇ ਦਿਲ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਥੂ ਜਿਹੀ ਪਾ ਦਿੰਦੀ। ਡਾਢੀ ਫਿੱਟ ਕਮੀਜ਼ ਜਿਹਦਾ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਅੰਗਾਂ ਦਾ ਬਾਹਰ ਝਾਕ ਪੈਂਦਾ, ਉੱਚੀ ਅੱਡੀ ਵਾਲੀ ਗੁਰਗਾਬੀ, ਸਿਰ ਤੇ ਰੁਮਾਲ, ਹੱਥ ਵਿੱਚ ਸੂਹੇ ਰੰਗ ਦਾ ਵੱਡਾ ਸਾਰਾ ਹੈਂਡਬੈਗ ਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਛਤਰੀ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਬਚਨੀ ਬੱਸ ਦੀ ਉਡੀਕ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਾ ਖਲੋਂਦੀ। ਕਿੱਡੀ ਫੁਰਤੀ ਨਾਲ ਉਹ ਤਿਆਰ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਸੀ। ਉਹਨੂੰ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਹੈਰਾਨੀ ਲੱਗਦੀ। ਕਈ ਵਾਰ ਤਾਂ 10 ਜਾਂ 12 ਘੰਟੇ ਕਟੜੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਦੀ। ਲੈ ਓਵਰਟਾਈਮ ਬਗੈਰ ਤਾਂ ਕੰਮ ਨੋ ਗੁੱਡ ਵਾ। ਤੇ ਆਪਣੀਆਂ ਕਈ ਸਾਥਣਾਂ ਵਾਂਗ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਨੂੰ ਖੂਬ ਖੁਸ਼ ਰੱਖਦੀ ਤੇ ਖੂਬ ਓਵਰਟਾਈਮ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਪੇ ਪੈਕੇਟ ਚੋਕਾ ਪਾਰਾ ਕਰ ਲੈਂਦੀ। So this was a description of the character Bachni and her waking up in the morning and getting herself ready to go to work. And her routine, this was a description of her daily routine and the way she dressed. And the author in this is setting up someone who takes quite care of the way they look and dresses quite well. And so the story really is around Bachni's life and what her life is like when she goes to work in the factory. And the second paragraph, there's quite a few words in English such as overtime and pay packet. And that just gives you an idea of the kind of work that Bachni was involved with. And so as we get towards the end of the story, after we've been given a description of her daily life at work and her life at home with her husband, the translations that you see before them are her reflecting on her life, because she has been upset at work because of the ways in which the women she works with, some of the white women she works with, treat her. And so she's reflecting, and this is in the first paragraph, you can see this, she's reflecting on how bad her life was here, but then she, in a dream state, and I'll go into the translation here, says to herself, well, life in the village is worse than hell. The hot season, wearing a face covering, oversized dresses, the smoky cowpat fires on which she made chapati after chapati, dishwashing, water carrying, patting dung cakes. She was busy with one chore after another. She needed permission from her mother-in-law to wash her clothes, and she even told her how to dress. And even if she made an effort to comb her hair and put on a bindi and lipstick, only God could save her from the chattering of the village women's teeth. Who in the village could endure a woman dressed with high-heel open shoes, hair flowing free, and a fancy handbag? So having done these reflections, she falls asleep, but in her sleep, she's troubled. So she goes on, conscious thoughts stirred unconscious mind, and all of her troubles began dancing before Bachni. Like a machine joined to a machine, Bachni was standing at the conveyor belt, her arms moving at a high speed. Jagiro and Amro, who were also workers in the factory with Bachni, were talking loudly to each other, and one of them erupted in laughter. On hearing this, Eileen and Rosemary, who are also other workers in the factory, broke from their mumblings and showing the status of their race and colour in their usual manner, barked, "Bloody bitches." Hearing this, Bachni flew into a rage. She didn't know how, but in a split second she found herself standing over Rosemary, asking her, "Rosemary, you what say?" Rosemary was looking confused when a loud slap landed on her left cheek. Suddenly, Bachni woke up. Where was she? Village, England, factory, or at home, yet deeply troubled. And this story, as you can tell from the ending, really gives a beautiful, quick insight into the multiple tensions that a young woman is facing as a migrant coming to Britain.